For the past 20 years, Ryan Stramrood of Cape Town, South Africa has undertaken some of the most difficult swimming challenges in frigid waters. Tonight, he spoke to the Fairmont community about his experiences, hoping to bring insight and inspiration to southern Minnesota. Sophia Jernander reports.
I undertook an incredible journey that was never meant to be.
20 years ago, Ryan Stramrood started swimming just off the coast of his hometown in Cape Town, South Africa. He said the frigid waters made him wonder how much he could test the limits of his mind.
Our minds are so powerful, but they want to keep us safe, so they send us running when the going gets tough.
Stramrood's challenges include swimming the Bering Strait and a trip from Taiwan to China. Since then, he has become an inspirational speaker, bringing his tales to crowds across the world. He says that people often set goals for themselves that do not challenge them enough.
They always have a roadmap, exactly what they're going to do and how they're going to achieve it. Then I say, I'm afraid you're still in your comfort zone. So my challenge is find the goal that you don't think you can achieve, because that's the one that's going to make you vulnerable and make you think a little harder.
Tuesday night, Stramrood came to Fairmont, hosted by Sweet Financial.
We have committed over the last 5 years or so to bringing inspiration and amazing people to our community and to the student body at Fairmont Junior Senior High School.
Sweet Financial hopes that those who attended the event gained a new understanding of what it takes to achieve their dreams.
Our organization is really focused on bringing possibility to Fairmont and the surrounding communities. So we believe that, possibility comes to those who create it, and in order to create it, you need a little inspiration and insight in how to actually take those steps forward.
As for Stramrood, he's just glad that his intense hobby has given him the opportunity to affect communities throughout the world.
I'm blessed to be able to give these keynote talks wherever I go and change many, many people's lives.
In Fairmont, Sophia Jernander, KEYC News Now.
If you want to see more of Ryan's accomplishments, you can visit his website. We'll have a link at KEYC.com.